Hi, my name is Morgan Godwin, and I was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for the overdose death of one of my best friends in the whole world, Justin DeLong. We had got into OxyContin together back in 2008. He was my connect. And when they got so expensive we couldn't afford them anymore, he showed me a cheaper alternative. He saw that if I kept spending $100 a pill on Oxy, I was probably going to end up homeless, definitely not be able to pay my bills. So we got some black tar heroin, and we could smoke it on foil, just like Justin smoked the Oxys on foil. It was the same thing. He said, now I know heroin's a 4-letter word, it's scary, but wait, it's actually a pharmaceutical. Heroin is a name trademarked by Bayer. And he was right. Diacetylmorphine. It used to be used as a pharmaceutical. Pharmacologically, it's quite similar to oxycodone. And I tried it, and the high was pretty much the same, except it was 1/10 of the cost. And we made the switch. Justin was the first person I knew to become addicted to opioids, to get withdrawals. I remember him telling me about the pain and the restless legs and the aches, and it was so abstract for me. I felt so bad for him. I didn't get it yet. I would find out later. Justin was also the first person I know to go to jail. That wasn't a common life experience in my middle-class neighborhood, in my family. I was so horrified when I found out my friend had been arrested and gone to jail. This is 2008. I'm looking up how to write him, and it said you could just put a $20 bill in the envelope and send it. So I did that, which you can't do now. But because it was so easy to put money on his books, just sent him $20. He said he was hungry. I didn't want my friend to be hungry, and I wrote him a letter. It seemed like the most normal thing. And when he got out, he would not shut up about it. You wrote me. You actually wrote me. And you put money on my books. I'm like, well, duh, you're my friend. I didn't get it then. I'd never gone to jail. I didn't know what it was like. But I get it now. I get why he was so excited. We used together for years. He was a small-time to mid-level dealer on and off. I was a pizza delivery driver. That's how I supported my habit. And I was known to overdose. I like to push the limits, and I like to mix drugs. The first time I ever overdosed was long before I was addicted. It was one of the first times I did heroin. I'd gone to Justin's apartment, got a 20 bag, came home and took a few hits off of tinfoil, just smoking. Little did I know the benzodiazepines that were in my system from that morning were still in my bloodstream, and that those two drugs should never mix. The next thing I knew, I opened my eyes and I was surrounded by cops and paramedics. They were taking my boyfriend to jail. He had called 911 to save my life, which he did. And they took him to jail and gave him a felony possession of heroin. And we were evicted out of our apartments, including our roommates who didn't use drugs. That was before the drugs themselves had started to bring me misery, long before addiction. The drugs themselves didn't cause that harm, but drug policy did. And so overnight, we were homeless. My boyfriend had a felony. He lost all hope for his future. And we just kept doing drugs. I could be my full self around Justin. When I was at work or when I was at school, you always had to compartmentalize. You could only reveal a certain curated portion of yourself, of your personality. When people ask, hey, how are you doing today, Morgan? You know what your boss doesn't want to hear? Oh, I'm dope sick because I couldn't get heroin this morning. No, you're going to get fired if you said that. Same goes at school. I couldn't tell my classmates that. I was studying to be a paramedic. There's no way I would. But around Justin, I could complain about my finals, my boss being mean to me, and my heroin addiction. I could be my full self, and he could be that way around me. It's so terrible to have to hide part of who you are all the time from the world. But that's the system we've created by criminalizing drugs, specifically, especially possession being a felony. You can never admit to anyone, much less yourself. You get in this defensive posture. I can control it. I can control it. And then one day you can't. But your heels are dug in. It was so hard to get treatment. We didn't even know how. They said go to NA. Well, Justin and I, we didn't like the vibe. I admitted I was powerless over my addiction. I couldn't say that when I was using, because I could feel that I still had personal choice, but that I was making bad choices. And that's what I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop making bad choices. And so I just remember Justin and I commiserating about, I think there's no hope for us, because they say the only thing that works is 12-step, but 12-step doesn't work for us. So what does that mean? Are we going to live and die in our addiction? Justin told me a joke one time. Morgan, what does heroin smell like? I don't know, Justin, what? Vinegar and broken dreams. I think about that a lot. The night Justin texted me for a gram of heroin, I assumed his regular dealer was out or in jail. I wasn't a dealer by any traditional definition of the word at all. I had just got a life insurance settlement because my mom had overdosed and died on her prescription medication 3 months before. My mom, who didn't use drugs, who got medicine from her doctor. But she chose to take too many, and I found her dead in her bed. Well, I finally got that money I'd always wanted. I thought in my addiction, if I just had enough money to buy enough heroin, I would finally be happy. But that's not real, because then I got a bunch of money and I ended up doing 6 grams of heroin a day. I was living with a drug dealer since I had been living with my mom, and she died. So then I was homeless with multiple felonies and on probation. So where was I going to go? So I moved into what was essentially a trap house, and that's where I was living. So when Justin texted me for a gram, I didn't want my friend to be dope sick. He'd saved me so many times. So many times did I have to go to school or work, and I would have been sick if it wasn't for him. He enabled me to hold my life together. Because when you're dope sick, what you cannot do? Go to work. I got sent home a few times for vomiting on the job. I always worked at restaurants. Can't go to school sick. Anyway. And so I sold him a gram. It was the most normal thing. And then the next night, my front door burst open. SWAT descended, put me in handcuffs, and told me I was being arrested for the overdose death of Justin DeLong. They put me in the back of the cruiser and I laid my head against the glass. They told me the charge carried a 20-year mandatory minimum sentence. I did the math. It meant I would be 44 when I got out of prison. I'd already wanted to die. My addiction was miserable. Then my mom died. I became even more suicidal. Then Justin died and I was being prosecuted for his death. I had no will left to live. And all I thought about was suicide. I wasn't arrested for a few months, and I ended up getting very lucky and only sentenced to 60 months in prison, 5 years. I did about 2 years in jail, 2 years in prison. And what am I doing now? A little bit of everything. We just decriminalized drugs in Oregon and are now going to use our marijuana tax revenue to fund a treatment system, something that has never existed before in my state, something that could have saved Justin's life were it in effect then. I serve as a commissioner on the state's Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission. I write, I tweet, I speak at conferences, I do some media, and I am honored to work as a research associate at the Health and Justice Action Lab out of Northeastern School of Law. I get to turn all of my traumas, all of the horrible things that happened to me and that I witnessed happening to others. And I get to try to change the systems that cause those harms. And so far, you know what? It's successful. We are changing it. We're changing the world for better.